Okay, let's take a look at Headway Upper Intermediate Unit 2, page 16 of the student's book. So Upper Intermediate Student Book, page 16, Test Your Grammar. Again, we're starting the unit with some review, and we're looking at some sentences here that are kind of odd. Part 1, what is strange about these sentences? What should they be? We're looking at sentences that are not quite right. The grammar isn't necessarily wrong, but these are sentences that don't make much sense, and we need to correct them so that they make sense. Number 1, we have Columbus has discovered America. Well, if you have studied history, you may have learned about the Italian explorer Christopher Columbus, who sailed from Spain across the Atlantic Ocean, and he discovered America. Discovered actually the whole part of the world called the Americas sometimes. And that was a long time ago, more than 500 years ago. So of course he's dead. Columbus discovered America. We will say this in past. Okay? Instead of has discovered, which is present perfect, we need to say Columbus discovered America in 1492. It began and ended a long time ago, right? So we need past simple instead of present perfect. Number 2, and we have man first walked on the moon. Well, this sentence doesn't make much sense. Man here refers to people in general, okay? Sometimes the word man is used this way. Man first walked on the moon. When we say first, this means the first time it happened. And so we need to say when it happened if we're using the word first here in the sentence as an adverb. Man first walked on the moon. We could say man first walked on the moon in 1969. We need to say when it happened if we're using the word first before a verb. Number 3, I traveled all my life. I went everywhere. That sounds like a person's life is over. It sounds like the person talking is dead. But of course that's impossible. That doesn't make sense. So when we're talking about our experiences in life in general, without saying specifically when something happened, we can say I've traveled all my life. I've been everywhere. Right? Now, number 4, I've learned English. I've learned English. If you've been taking English classes and studying, you could say, I've been learning English. I've learned English. It sounds like I'm finished learning English. I know all of English, which probably no one does, right? So that doesn't make sense. We want to say, I've been learning English. And for number 5, I've been losing my passport. If you have to go to an embassy or a consulate in another country, maybe you need to go to the Saudi embassy because you lost your passport, you need a new one, you would say, I've lost my passport. If you say, I've been losing my passport, this sounds like it was a process that took some time, or you're losing your passport, but you haven't finished losing it yet. So that doesn't make sense. We want to say, I've lost my passport. Now, part 2. Which of these verbs can change from simple to continuous or vice versa? What is the change in meaning? Number 1, we have these 2 questions. They're both good questions. They're both possible. What do you do in New York? And what are you doing in New York? So maybe I go to a business meeting. I meet someone who says he lives in New York, and I say, what do you do in New York? I'm asking him about his job, right? What is your job in New York? What are you doing in New York? When we ask someone a question in present continuous with what are you doing? What are you doing here? For example, that means why? Why are you here? So maybe I'm visiting New York and I run into an old friend I haven't seen in 20 years and I say, hey, what are you doing in New York? That means, why are you here? Why are you here in New York? Now, number 2, we see this sentence, I know you don't like football. I'm talking to one of my students who doesn't like football, and we're doing a lesson on football. I say, hey, I know you don't like football, but we're going to study it because the rest of the class likes it. Can I say, I'm knowing you don't like football? No. Can I say, I know you aren't liking football? No. Those both sound very strange because these verbs, know and like, are both state verbs, right? State verbs are often used to talk about something that happens in our head or in our heart, right? And so we don't normally use state verbs in continuous tenses. Right? So it just doesn't make sense to try to do that one in continuous form. Now, how about number 3? Here we have past simple compared to past continuous. I had a cup of tea at 8. I was having a cup of tea at 8. What's the difference? Well, maybe you had tea with your breakfast. If you're lucky enough to start work at 9, maybe you're eating breakfast at 8, and so you had a cup of tea with your breakfast. Finished, ended, that's what time it happened. If you say, I was having a cup of tea at 8, it sounds like you're telling a story. I was having a cup of tea at 8, and then the phone rang. It was my boss. He was so upset that I had to leave the house before I could finish my tea. This is the idea. Now, number 4, someone's eaten my sandwich. You guys have seen a lot of these examples before, including this one, or one very similar in the intermediate book. Someone's eaten my sandwich, right? I left the room to make a phone call, and when I came back, my sandwich was gone. Someone's eaten my sandwich. Someone's been eating my sandwich. Notice the first sentence was present perfect. This one, someone has been eating, is present perfect continuous. So we're comparing present perfect simple in the first sentence to present perfect continuous. This indicates an action in progress that hasn't finished. Right? So maybe I see someone took a few bites out of my sandwich. Maybe half of my sandwich is still here. Right? Who's been eating my sandwich? Number 5, we have I'm hot because I've been running. I've been running, of course, is present perfect continuous. We often use present perfect continuous in situations like this to talk about an action in past that only ended a short time ago and still has a present effect. I was outside, I was running, I got hot. I just came inside a moment ago and I'm out of breath, I'm thirsty, I'm sweating, and I feel hot. I'm hot because I've been running. Could we say I'm hot because I've run? Would that be a good sentence? I'm hot because I've run. No, that sentence really doesn't make sense, because when you say I've run, this just means that you have run before, but it doesn't say when it happened. We don't know if it happened 5 years ago, 10, 20 years ago. So it just doesn't make sense that way. It sounds very strange. We would say, I'm hot because I've been running. If I say this, then the person I'm talking to knows that I just finished running a moment ago, maybe a minute or two ago. This is the idea. All right, I hope that helps.